Peter was walking through a wooded area when he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the bushes that caught his attention. He decided to take a look, and to his surprise, saw a strange small creature. When he looked closer, he thought it was a puppy, but he wasn't sure. He decided to take him to the vet. A wyval. The vet immediately sighed. Where'd you get that from? You're not supposed to see that at all. Man thinks he saved us, puppy. When vet sees what it is, he turns pale. Peter and his wife Bianca were completely caught off guard by the vet's reaction. They expected that he might have been surprised by the appearance of the puppy, but this outburst felt way out of line. But the vet had a very good reason. Because unlike Peter and Beyonce and anybody they had spoken to so far, the vet actually knew what animal they were dealing with her. It was most definitely not a puppy and not something that Peter should have ever gotten his hands on. Checking the wind, the vet finally told the couple the truth. They could not believe how stupid they had been. They have made a big mistake taking this creature home. But what was this strange naked animal really? Why did the vet have such an extreme reaction, and in how much trouble was Peter? It was a sound that Peter was not at all familiar with. He had walked in these woods many times as a child and an adult, but never heard anything like this before. And he could not help that it now piqued his curiosity. He needed to find the source, but inside he wishes that he had just kept walking that fateful day. The sound led Peter off the forest path and to a couple of bushes. Having no idea what he was dealing with, Peter knew that he had to act carefully. But when he pushed some of the bushes aside and found the creature producing this strange sound, he was quickly at ease. This animal looked anything but dangerous. But the more looked at it, the less he could make sense of what it actually was. It was clearly a young animal, but Peter was not sure what kind exactly. All he could speculate was that it looked most like a strange puppy, but he would turn out to be very wrong with this assessment. But despite him not knowing what animal this was exactly, he did understand why it was making this sound. This puppy was much too young to survive here without his mother, and seeing how thin it had become, Peter suspected that its mother had not been here in a while. So Peter was left with a difficult decision to make. Would he leave the puppy here in the hopes that its mother would come back to feed and protect it? Or was he going to take matters into his own hands and bring this puppy with him back to the city? Seeing the state that this poor animal was in, the decision was not a hard one to make. He very carefully reached out to the puppy and lifted the animal up. He got a small bag with him in which the puppy fit perfectly, but the animal did not stop making its crying sounds. It was obviously stressed. It was about an hour walking back to the city, and this gave Peter enough time to figure out what he wanted to do next. He could not go to the vet as he was not open on the weekend, only for emergencies, but that would cost a lot more money. Money that Peter was not willing to spend. But luckily, Peter was also confident in his own ability to take care of a puppy. They had a dog at home, and when he still lived with his parents, they actually had their dog deliver a litter of puppies that he was more than willing to help with. If only he knew what animal he was really dealing with. The most important thing he needed for this animal was puppy milk, and while he did not have a dog that could provide that, his own dog is male, he did know that you can buy adequate substitutes at the pet store, and so on his way home, he went by one. Still had the strange-looking puppy with him, though, and it was drawing a lot of eyes on the store. People had not seen any creature that looked like this before, and naturally, Peter started to get questions about it. But his answers left most people unsatisfied. The fact that he had just taken this creature out of the forest rubbed some people the wrong way. And while he believed that he was saving a puppy here, a lot of people were thinking that this was not a puppy at all. But they could also not tell him what he was actually dealing with here. There are a lot of creatures living in the forest, of which we have no idea how their babies look. It could easily have very much belonged in the forest, and Peter was interfering in something he had no business in. Peter was very much surprised by this negative reaction, mainly because he did not see it like that at all. In his mind, he was doing something very noble. He was making an effort to save a defenseless and helpless creature. Peter quickly bought the mild he needed and made his way out of the store. He did not need this. And besides, he was still convinced that he was dealing with a puppy of some sort. And he was sure the vet would confirm that to him tomorrow. For now, he was going to do everything in his power to keep this animal alive. It had stopped its crying a little while ago, but Peter was pretty sure that it was from exhaustion. With how weak it looked, it probably did not have the energy to put up much of a fuss. Back home, Peter started preparing the milk before even telling his wife, Bianca, that he had brought something home. And she walked in on him giving the animal the bottle and was stunned by what she was witnessing. But she did not have time to be shocked for too long, as she was forced to act very quickly. Just behind her, their dog Benjamin also walked into the room. And the moment he laid eyes on the creature in Peter's hand, he charged him and started to bark as loud as he could. Bianca just about managed to grab him by the collar and pull him back. They had never seen the dog behave like this. Peter put the animal down for a second and helped Bianca get Benjamin into another room. But even with the door closed, the dog did not stop barking. They were both completely caught off guard by this behavior, as Beyonce herself was notorious for bringing in animals she found, and Benjamin had never reacted like that before. What made this animal so different? The peace returned to the room a bit. Bianca could finally take a closer look at the animal that her husband had brought in while Peter went back to giving it milk. The animal was drinking as much of it as possible, and it started to look better by the second. And while Peter was still very sure that he was dealing with a puppy, Bianca was not so sure. Unlike the people at the pet store, she was actually very happy that Peter brought it home and thinks that he might have saved the creature's life because of this. But she just does not recognize a dog in it. She took a couple pictures of it, and while Peter was making a place for the creature to spend the night, she actually took it upon herself to look online if she could find anything that resembled this very strange-looking baby animal. She was determined. But no matter how much Bianca tried, she found nothing that made her sure of what this animal could be. And she actually started to believe that it was a dog after all, as there were so many kinds of puppies around. And if one lost most of its hairs, it could theoretically look like this animal. But she also knew that maybe only the vet could give them an answer with any kind of confidence. And so she was happy that Peter had set up an appointment for the next day early in the morning. She did not want to wait long for answers. Even though the puppy had drunk a lot of milk and was doing a lot better by the looks of things, Peter was still afraid it might not make it through the night. What if it had a bad reaction to the milk, or if it was too cold? He could not explain why he cared so much, but he did. And so Peter decided to stay up all night to keep an eye on the animal. Bianca was very surprised that her husband was willing to make such a sacrifice for an animal that he had only found a couple hours ago. Yeah, she had never seen this side of her husband before. And luckily for Peter, the animal made it through the night without many problems. It woke up a couple of times, and Peter gave it one more bottle of milk. And Bianca even came to him around 3 o'clock to keep watch over the animal so that he could still get some sleep. She definitely did not feel a similar connection to the creature as Peter, but she had a lot of respect for what he did and wanted to support him however so could. She was also planning on joining him at the doctor's the next morning. She was too curious not to. The animal actually managed to make it through the night, all right? It was still sleeping when Peter woke up from his couple hours of rest, and he and Bianca just looked at the very peaceful animal. Peter felt more and more confident in his decision to take it home. The appointment with the vet was in about 1 hour, so they had to get things ready. The couple only had a pretty sizable cage for their own dog, which they could use to transport the baby animal, but they made sure to pack it with soft blankets to make it at least comfortable. But the animal seemed to be anything but comfortable in there, as the moment the cage door shut behind it, the creature woke and started to try and find a way out of its enclosure. And when it found out its attempts were in vain, it just started to make a lot of noise. The noise actually got their own dog to react with loud howling and scratching the door. It had not been in the same room as the animal ever since their first encounter yesterday, where their dog tried to attack the poor creature. What was it that drew such a reaction from their normally calm feline friend? For now, they decided to ignore the dog's reaction. Beyonce quickly took him out for a walk while Peter made the final preparations for their departure. He expected to only be away for a couple hours at most, but he could have never predicted what was set to happen at the vet that day. When Bianca got back, the pair got straight into the car with the creature still in the cage and still screaming its lungs out. Luckily, it was only a short drive to the vet because they could not stand this noise much longer. They did not know an animal this small could produce so much sound. When they arrived at the vet's office, they immediately drew the attention of everybody in the waiting room. At first, it was because of the noise the animal was making, but past that, it was mainly the strange appearance of the creature that kept people looking and talking. Many were not shy in asking Peter and Bianca about what animal this was, how they had acquired it, and why they were bringing it to the vet today. And the couple were more than happy to answer all these questions, as they felt like there was no reason to be secretive about it or something. After their answers, the people here could not help themselves from starting to speculate on what this animal could be. Some people still thought that it might be a puppy, and Peter was among those, but most did not see this as a possibility. It definitely kept the room interested in talking, so much so that when the vet was ready to call on the next patient, he also took notice of the commotion and went over to see what was happening exactly. And he was stunned by what he saw screaming in the oversized cage. He announced to the room that some patients might have to wait a little bit longer because he needed to see this creature urgently. Peter and Beyonce needed to come into his office right away, and not a lot of people protested it. If the vet saw an emergency, they had to respect that. The couple themselves were a bit surprised. Of course, they liked the fact that they did not have to wait as long, but they were also concerned that the vet felt the need to see them even sooner than they had originally planned. Could there be something wrong with the animal they did not know about? When they got into the office, they saw that the vet looked very nervous and impatient. He wanted them to put the cage on the table immediately and open it up to get a better look at the animal. He really studied it carefully and only did a couple quick medical-related checks. Then the vet put the animal in its cage again and told the couple that he needed to do some tests on the animal in the other room as he did not have the right equipment there. At this point, Peter and Bianca saw no reason to question the vet, but they most definitely should have done that. The vet took the caged animal into the back, and to the couple's surprise, it actually stopped screaming very quickly after the vet closed the door behind him. They could only speculate that the animal was let out of the cage again because inside there was seemingly no way of silencing it. They were very impatient for the vet to come back as they really wanted to ask the man what kind of animal they were dealing with. The anticipation was killing, and it was starting to turn into impatience as the vet stayed away for a long time and they had no indication of when they were set to return. Peter got so fed up with waiting that he even tried to go through the same door. The vet had gone to ask him what was taking so long, but this door was not locked, and the only way in and out of the office right now was the normal entrance. But behind that door, a nasty surprise waited for Peter. When he opened the door, he was greeted by the sight of two police officers who were waiting there. Peter was taken aback by this, but even more when he was told that he and Bianca needed to wait in the officer for the time being. They needed to be patient while they were figuring this all out. After recovering from the shock, Peter demanded an explanation, but the officer did not feel the need to tell him anything other than that. It had something to do with the baby animal that he and Bianca had brought in, something that Peter himself could have guessed, of course. Peter walked back into the officer feeling defeated as hell. What had he gotten Bianca and himself into here? All he had wanted to do was help this poor animal, but it was now starting to look like that was a big mistake. But Peter knew that he had done nothing wrong and he was willing to die on that hill. They still did not know what they had done wrong or what was going on with this animal. When the police officers came into the office and asked the couple to come with them to the station for some questioning, Peter and Bianca knew that they had no other choice but to comply here. On that out of the office, he actually saw the vet look at them with disappointment in his eyes, and Peter could not help himself. He asked the vet what they had done wrong or why he called the police, and the answer he got would stay with him for a very long time. You were not supposed to see this. This animal should have never been in your possession. Peter was stunned by this response, and he did not really know how to react. He had found this damn creature in the forest. How was he supposed to know that he should have just left it there? The ride to the police station was silent. Not even Peter and Bianca wanted to say a word to each other, afraid that they might reveal something to the police that could work against them. All Peter told Bianca that they would be completely honest and transparent no matter what. Peter expected that he and Bianca would be questioned separately, as that is what he always saw in all the moving. The police wanted to see if their stories matched up or something, but that was not the case as the couple was placed in a room together and left alone for a little bit. Now, they had the opportunity to talk among themselves about what the hell was going on here. They tried to figure out what possible reason the police could have to arrest them in a situation like this, but it felt like the only way they were going to get any clarity was by learning the identity of the animal. Not much later, a police officer walked into the room with a relatively relaxed look on his face, a sharp contrast to how Peter and Beyonce were feeling right now. The officer introduced himself and Officer Michael and told the couple that he wanted them to explain exactly what had happened. He was mainly curious as to how they had gotten the animal in their possession and what they had done with it in the time from when they obtained it to when they brought it to the vet. And Peter tried to be completely transparent about this. The story made sense to the officer, but he still had a hard time believing that Peter just happened to find this animal in the forest. That would be a very big coincidence that the officer did not see as likely, at least not at first. The more he talked to Peter and Beyonce, the more it became clear to him that they had no good reason to have this animal in their possession for any other reason than just pure coincidence. and wanting to help a defenseless animal. The only conclusion he could come to was that Peter was innocent. And while Peter and Bianca were very glad to hear the verdict, they were also even more annoyed that it was now clear that they had been arrested for nothing and still did not even really know what they were suspecting. They demanded answers right now. And luckily, this officer was willing to give them what they wanted. Well, starting off with the animal itself. Most people were right. They had not been dealing with a puppy at all. The strange-looking animal was actually a baby Babirusa. Peter and Bianca just looked at each other, confused. They had never before heard of this animal, but the officer assured them that this was not strange. He did not know about its existence either until today. It was not native to this part of the world at all, but there were actually a couple like present close by here. Apparently, the zoo had a couple of Babirusas, and the one female they had been pregnant up to a couple days ago, but there was a problem. The female had escaped just days before she was said to deliver, and when she was found again, the baby was gone. Babirusas are rare, and so the zoo speculated that somebody had stolen the female to have the baby for him or herself. The zoo had already enlisted the help of the police and alerted all the animal-related professionals in the area, like vets, to be on the lookout for the baby. But now the police officer was convinced that the mother Babirusa had gotten out of her enclosure on her own in a desperate attempt to find the perfect place to give birth. But she was sadly captured again without her baby. Luckily, the animal was now already back at its mother at the zoo getting milk and gaining strength. The zoo ended up strengthening the enclosure, and as a sorry, Peter and Beyonce got lifelong tickets to the zoo for free.